This is Channels Television's breaking news.
Hi, I'm Sarah McDonald, reporting to you from Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. Today, we'll be covering child sexual abuse in Canadian schools. Are our kids safe, or do our teachers have too much access to our kids? Child abuse is still prevalent in today's modern society. Many people believe that we have worked past many of these issues in the 21st century, where in fact it is only being hidden. We look at our schools as being a safe place to leave our children during the day, in hopes that they will be taught, cared, and loved. But is it safe? Sexual abuse of children and youth has become almost common practice in today's school systems. I am going to try and make contact with a youth worker in one of our local schools where a teacher has recently been fired for multiple sexual abuse allegations against his students. According to the Government of Canada, between 1997 and 2017, there have been over 750 cases of child sexual abuse in Canadian schools, grades K to 12. There have been 1,172 victims and 714 arrested school personnel. I am currently on site at the school where the teacher has recently been fired for sexual abuse allegations against his students. I'm standing out here waiting, trying to catch a youth worker or a teacher willing to talk about what's happening in the school. Excuse me, sir, are you willing to talk about the recent allegations that your school is facing from a teacher that was sexually abusing its students?
Not right now.
Where can we talk?
You can call me later at 218-1632.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. I am now sitting down with the youth worker we spoke to outside of the school with the teacher facing allegations of child sexual abuse against his students. We're going to ask him a few questions about children's rights and whether or not they are being broken in our school systems. Thank you for sitting down with us today. We really appreciate you coming in and taking your own time to talk about something that a lot of people don't want to talk about. So thank you. Is there anything you want to say about, anything before we start?
Yeah, first off, I want to say that I'm appalled and disgusted by what has been going on where I work. I should not be talking to you right now, especially during an active investigation, so please make sure that my confidentiality is held as well, please. But yeah, ask me anything you want. I'm doing this because I believe that we need to bring awareness to this situation. It's happening across the country, and I think that it's very important that we figure out a way to stop this on all fronts as a collaborative effort.
What are children's rights at school, and what are their rights around sexual abuse?
Yeah, well, the Convention on the Rights of the Child states that every child has the right to be protected from being hurt, mistreated in body and mind. They also have the right to protection from any type of exploitation and to be free from sexual abuse.
Are children's rights being protected in schools?
I would say no, not as good as they should, at least. Studies I've been reading say nearly almost 1,300 students are victims of sexual offenses by school staff in the last 2 decades. So not all student rights are being protected in our schools, especially all across the country. A handful of parents and educators have realized now that our focus on kids' physical safety is narrow. Since schools are now like a second home for our children, they spend most of their time in school rather than at home. We need to make sure that all their human rights are protected in school, not just outside of school. Many parents have stories from their schools in which their children's rights were violated. They just aren't talking about it.
Why is sexual abuse happening to students in our schools?
That's a tough question. I don't think anybody really knows what the reason is. I'm sure lots of studies have tried to figure that out, but many people can say that we're not being safe enough, we're not keeping enough eye on our children, but we do everything that we can in our school. We do interviews, record checks, and we watch them with pretty much 24/7. There has been some studies though where Canada has found that 714 employees or former employees were linked to sexual offenses against school children between 1997 and 2017. It's ridiculous. That's a large number, and that's going from the Child Protection Center.
What can we do to prevent this abuse from happening in our schools?
There's many things that we can do, and that we should be doing already. One of those things is awareness. We need to be aware that this does happen, and it is happening around us. I think a lot of times people believe that it isn't going to happen to me, it isn't going to happen to my family or my child, when in reality it could. And so we need to be vigorous in watching, and we need to be aware. Advocacy is another piece. We need to advocate for our children. We need to advocate for each other and advocate for change. We need to make changes to prevent. As a parent, I make sure I always show interest in my child's day-to-day life. I always want to get to know who's around my child. What are my child's teachers? What is the interactions with adults in my child's life, their friends, things like that. I choose all my caregivers carefully. My babysitters, if I ever need a babysitter, I always use a family member. I talk about the media to my child, and I let them know the warning signs. I let them know what the grooming process is, and things like that.
What can we do to prevent this abuse from happening in our schools and to our children?
There's lots of things that we could do. The first one is awareness. I think awareness is very important. We need to be aware of what's going on around us. We need to be aware of the people that are around us and what is happening in our communities. I think a lot of the time people like to kind of shame this stuff and hide it, when in fact we need to put it in the spotlight and realize that this stuff is happening and we need to do something about it. A lot of times when this happens, people shove it under the rug because they believe it's not going to happen to me, it's not going to happen to my child or my family, when in fact it is possible. So awareness is very important. Education around it as well. We need to be educated that what are the warning signs? How is this process happening and what can we do to stop that? And advocacy is important. We need to advocate for our child and advocate for each other. As a parent who is aware that this stuff is going on, I always try to make sure that I'm showing interest in my child's day-to-day life. I always like to get to know who's around my child, what adults are in my child's life, whether it's at school or an after-school program, especially their friends. I always try and get in contact and try to befriend my child's friends' parents and things like that. I always choose my caregivers carefully. I always talk about the media to my child so they're aware of what's going on and about the warning signs. It's not beneficial if my child doesn't know what's going on. If my child thinks the world is not a harsh place and isn't aware of what's going on, then that's a risk factor, and it's very important that we protect our child by keeping them educated.
Do parents know their children's rights? Do children in our schools know their rights? Is it possible that by educating our children and youth within our school systems about their rights, it could be a deterrent or a preventative factor against child abuse? In the Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 42 states that children have the right to know their rights. Adults should know about these rights and help them learn about them too. It is our responsibility to educate the children.